I would like to talk about saving the world. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the kind of narrative around saving the world, that it would be arrogant or ridiculous to talk about saving the world. Wanting to save the world is something ridiculous. Like, who are you? And what I would like to point out is how horrific and ridiculous and arrogant and ignorant it is if we keep not saving the world. Who do we think are we? Not saving this world. Coming not from pity for suffering species or suffering humans, not coming from a helper syndrome, just coming from the scientific clarity that within very few years, my current information is 7 to 9 years until climate change has hit an irreversible point, a point of no return, where after that we can do whatever we want. We could then do everything right in terms of carbon dioxide, etc. And still we won't be able to reverse the vicious circle of global warming. So coming from that scientific clarity, just everybody who chooses or who thinks he or she isn't ridiculous, doesn't want to be ridiculous, has to respond to that. And so maybe as a compromise, we would rather have to redefine what it is saving the world and what it isn't, instead of choosing to not save the world because we do not want to be ridiculous or because we want to belong to those ones who are pseudo-sovereign and pseudo-mature. Eventually, all of those masks and roles are just hiding that we are cowards, that we have no idea, and that we hope that we won't be the ones who are called out by the others. That's a very short-visioned, immature, childish game. So maybe as a compromise, let's find another term. Because definitely what's very clear for me is we won't be the ones saving the world. But we can be the ones who do not keep adding layer by layer to the problem. And if we stop doing that, we hack the code anyway. If we stop adding layers of suffering to the suffering around, if we stop that, if we manage to stop adding layers of suffering, it will automatically lead to us reducing suffering, because we are then recovering from our own suffering inside. So it's rather, let's reverse what we have added in an unnecessary way to existence. If we figure out how to reverse that, the system will regulate itself. It's us stepping out of the way because we have been obviously the ones who stepped into the way in a way that this planet cannot digest in a healthy way, or not digest in a way that allows us to have the best circumstances for existing. So it's rather us stepping out of the way in terms of global self-regulation. It's rather us providing the setting or providing, recreating, re-allowing the setting that will lead in a self-healing collective dynamics to global regulation. And if we regulate one thing, all things will regulate, because it's not about different topics that we are suffering from. It's about different symptoms from the same topic. So it's the same with individual therapy. If you really figure out how to treat yourself well in one aspect of your life, it's a matter of time until those other aspects of your life will learn that as well, just because you are way too intelligent in terms of aliveness in order to have one aspect of your life, one area of your life that's truly free and the other ones are truly unfree. That's just, there are just two poles, suffering or freedom. And suffering, I was introduced to suffering as a child, like life is suffering, coming from Buddhist quotes, and I was like, no, life is not about suffering. I think Buddha has been wrong. Now I know what he means. However, when I zoom into the term of suffering, what I see is trauma. And what I see in specific is collapse due to trauma. So collapse means disembodiment, dissociation, numbness due to trauma. What we know from trauma therapy or trauma science, trauma research, is that everything that you numbed out around, that you shut down, where you disembodied, where you disassociated because of situation X or certain circumstances, is something that underneath the numbness, the fatigue, the emptiness, hides more energy than everything where you are just frozen, where you are stuck, where you are like in a permanent mode of alarm. It has a lot of your energy, but it doesn't have that much energy that you have where you do not sense yourself anymore. So where we do not see anything, where we are empty instead of too full, where we are collapsed instead of frozen. This is where most of our energy is hidden. So now or to some extent, or like boiling that down, human mankind is in the situation that it is in right now because of collective trauma. Because of collective trauma and in specific collective collapse. Collective collapse or collapse in general is suffering. So it's like suffering is the shadow of emptiness that isn't truly empty. Yeah. If we step into sensing our suffering instead of denying it, numbing ourselves out, playing the ridiculous game of a privileged culture, being educated and mature and adult. If we stop numbing out around our suffering will make visible for our eyes and sensible for our senses that there is something instead of nothing. It's not empty, it's too full. So it's re-embodying ourselves into ourselves. And that leads to an instinctive clarity between true silence, true emptiness, true letting go, and something that's just a collapse in order to cover the hell underneath. So it's basically us agreeing to layers of hell and death and trauma in ourselves. It's us agreeing to, in us are present those energies that we want the least, and they are the most present. So I do boil all of those symptoms of global mess down to collective or global trauma or collapse. To me, there are just different symptoms. And to me, it's zero question. Why can people do these things, these horrific things to each other? I'm quite the opposite, wondering why are we still able to want each other, to care at least a little bit for our environment, compared to what happened to this culture, this inherited layers of thousands of layers of trauma. I think it's quite amazing that we are still wanting to show up for existence. It's like, wow, the love inside must be a pretty resilient thing. Otherwise, it would just have been crushed in one of those wars, in one of those cases of rape. Would have been easy if love would be weak, it would have gone already. So still it's present in us and still motivates us at least to ask, at least sometimes, the right questions. How can we save the world in terms of becoming that unimportant in our confused terms and clear terms, that the system can regulate itself without further disturbance through us? Why are we not saving, why are we not in this position where mankind shows up in terms of going out of the way already? Our cultural narrative is because we are greedy and egoistic and only think about ourselves. And this is such a stupid thing. That's just so obviously wrong. We have to be egoistic. We have to learn how to be greedy. That is when we will start taking action for having a good life. And that is when we will start taking action for a planet that will be a beautiful place for more than the next upcoming 7 to 9 years. Come on. We are not egoistic, we are hating ourselves. We do not want a good life. We are running from a good life more than from anything else. We are begging for suffering. All those narratives around the Wall Street guys who are just thinking about their own existence, it's just so wrong. Nobody who is egoistic in instinctive, in powerful terms, could not think about where he or she lives, why she or he exists. So what we call egoism is the opposite. It's self-hatred. What we call greed is begging for the allowance to stay in the collapse until we are dead. If we recover from collapse, many concepts and scenes and disciplines and methods in our world will recover automatically as well. For example, love will recover because at the moment what we talk about, what we see or what we assume to be present when we talk about love is most of all collapse instead of love. For example, saving the world. It will be embedded in inner richness instead of burnout. At the moment, so many activists are working day and night and they are so burnt out and feel so alone for good reasons, because most people around them do not show up with their hands and with their physical power for helping refugees, etc. And all those scenes will help each other and will recover from the isolation or the kind of one-dimensionality that's at the moment present in those topics. Like activism will be embedded in an inner gain of energy instead of loss of inner energy. So I won't exhaust myself in order to help you. I will enrich myself when I help you. And how to do that, that's a topic for another video, but I'm basically doing this video because I think that I know how to take another step or big leap in terms of activism and love and all of that, etc. Coming to another scene, the spiritual scene at the moment. The spiritual scene, I'm working in the spiritual scene, or I have been working in that for the last decade at least, and it's such a intelligent and wise scene in terms of, let's say, what we know, or what we see, or what we quote all day long. We are all one, or whatever. All of that is true. Why are so many people so interested in spirituality and still so irrelevant on the global and political level? Because our term of spirituality is poisoned with the hidden shadow of collapse. That is why spirituality is so weak. Because it's so nice for us to feel love and light and peace and harmony that we oversee or overlook, I don't know the right term at the moment, that we deny, that we just want to cuddle. If collapse gets released out of the field of spirituality or love or activism, and even on politics, all of those scenes will live up to a way bigger power and a way bigger efficiency when it comes to getting stuff done. Because at the moment, what we are doing at the moment is, it's looping instead of truly taking action for this global regulation dynamics. And I think that I see a path how the global regulation can be allowed. And so I'm not talking about this in order to blame others or say why it doesn't work. I talk about this because I want to talk about how I think it can work. And I think I will need a few videos in order to give a rough sketch around that, but that's my motive for here. Thanks for watching.